Hi class, in this recording we're going to talk about prenatal nutrition, so how the growing uh, fetus gets nutrients, and we're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about circulatory changes that occur within the fetus. So as we look at these three different methods of nutrient exchange or gaining nutrients, it's worth emphasizing that it's not an immediate transition from one to the other. There's a gradual down regulation of one, which overlaps with a gradual up regulation of the other. So they overlap with each other. The three methods are uterine milk, trophoblastic nutrition, and placental nutrition. As we look at uterine milk, that uterine milk is going to have a lot of glycogen in it, and it comes from the uterine tubes and the endometrial glands. Sometimes these endometrial glands are referred to as the uterine glands. So that conceptus, and that conceptus is the generic term for everything, all the cells that are growing together, the stuff that will end up in the human being and the stuff that eventually just be passed as part of the afterbirth. All that conceptus is going to absorb a lot of uterine milk as it's traveling down the uterine tubes. And as it's continuing to move through the uterine cavity, it can still absorb uterine milk even before implantation has occurred. But this uterine milk that's being absorbed is very minimal. It's not necessarily going to be for an increase in volume of the conceptus so much as to maintain the necessary metabolic functions of the conceptus. Now, as we're looking at trophoblastic nutrition versus placental nutrition, trophoblastic nutrition will become upregulated as that conceptus is going to consume decidual cells of the endometrium and also going to continue to consume glycogen-rich secretions from the endometrial glands or uterine glands. And the progesterone that from the corpus luteum that's going to be continually maintained by the human chorionic gonadotropins, that progesterone is going to cause decidual cells to continue to grow. So as we look at the conceptus releases HCG. The HCG travels to the corpus luteum, causes the corpus luteum to release progesterone. Progesterone then causes the deciduous cells to keep growing, and the deciduous cells are then going to feed the conceptus, as the conceptus then continues to make more continues to make more HCG, which will then continue to stimulate the corpus luteum. So we have this wonderful feedback that allows for growth and nutrient uptake. And as the conceptus is burrowing down into the endometrium, the decidual cells are going to be digested. It's really burrowing's the wrong word. It eats its way down to the endometrium. And really at this point in time, the mother's immune system tends to take more of a, hey, this is a parasite approach to handling the conceptus, and that's one of the reasons why or the conceptus, I should say, is going to have some mechanisms at play to fool mom's immune system so that mom doesn't mount an entire full-throated immune response to destroy the conceptus. Now, as we look at this trophoblastic nutrition, this is the only mode of nutrition for the very first week after implantation. Starting at about week 2, we're going to start to see the development of placental nutrition. The trophoblastic nutrition is going to be the dominant or primary source of nutrition for the first 8 weeks. We call those first 8 weeks the trophoblastic phase of nutrition. After that first 8 weeks, the trophoblastic nutrition will be overtaken, I should say, by placental nutrition. So we'll have more and more nutrients coming from the placenta. As we look at placental nutrition overtakes trophoblastic nutrition at that 8-week mark. And we find that the placenta is going to cause nutrients from mom's bloodstream to make it into baby's bloodstream. And as we look at the placenta, that's just a disc-shaped organ. We've talked about it in separate presentations. Something we haven't talked about, though, is where it's located within the uterus. Usually, implantation occurs up in the fundus or on the posterior of the main body wall, on the superior margin. So the placenta is going to be up pretty high within the uterus. Occasionally, you can have a low-lying placenta. Every once in a while, though, the placenta is going to form over the internal os, and that's known as placenta previa, and there could be a partial placenta previa. And as we look at the placenta, and this instance right here, we have placenta previa. This is a situation where the child is going to need to be delivered via cesarean section because the placenta is blocking the exit from the uterus. And then during the placental stage of nutrition, the placenta is going to be the dominant source of nutrition. And starting at about week 12, so when we go from categorizing the child as an embryo to categorizing the child as a fetus, we now have the placenta being the sole source of nutrition. That's all we have for this recording on nutrition. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the class discussion board. And as always, happy studies.